All right, so it's a filming good. And so we had the tariff. Calhoun, oh, he opposed the tariff. Part of the reason is, what does tariff do to prices? Tariffs do what to generically to all prices? Yeah, raises prices. And he didn't like the tariff, no industry in the South. But what was the real reason? He wanted to do what with the tariff issue? Yes, protect slavery. What would that do? Okay, so tariff issue. How is he going to use the tariff issue to protect slavery? Yes.
By the South. They wanted to like say, this was awful. Look at what they've done. They're trying to take away.
Yeah, and regardless if you're a Whig or a Democrat, we all must unify. There's a term for this. It's called the litmus test. There's a little test where they dip that little piece of paper, a little chemically treated piece of paper. That's a litmus test. And so here it's a litmus test for all Southerners. Hey, whatever party you're on or you're with, are you with us to protect slavery? You have to prove it by being against the tariff. Well, he was threatening civil war, nullification. And I love, can I show you this picture? Oh, isn't that a beautiful picture? Who took it? Every once in a while they turned, that actually turned out really well. Every once in a while you luck out. So did we get to this? Oh, we're here. So, and almost immediately the threatening war. This is not overnight. We're talking Civil War. It's not quite 1850 yet, which would be like it's over. And 1861, where did they actually happen? But this is on the edge of Civil War. And so with that, Jackson. Oh, didn't I end class with my Jackson reaction? By all damnation. He said that a lot. Jackson did two things. First off, in his theory, but also showed when he came in, he demanded his allies to pass a force bill, which said the military, meaning the Navy, would enforce the tariffs. So he's going to say, I'm going to lead an army to the South to end these traitors. And so that was his first idea. And so the theory, everybody knew what Jackson meant. He issued a statement basically saying, I will not allow treason. Yes. Stretching. And with that, next, then behind the scenes, he worked on a compromise tariff because Jackson actually wanted to lower the tariff even more than 1832. And so they lowered the tariff a little bit more. And so he could portray then, I mean business, but yes, we can come together on this. So Jackson showed what actually a deft politician he was, and he would never, always got this reputation by his enemies of being this out of control maniac, and he was not. Flawed like everybody else. And here once again, it's South Carolina bringing down the Union. This is 1861, but a lot of these other states are looking at this going, what are we doing with this Nashville Convention? And here's the anti-nullification cartoon. Nullification, South Carolina Ordinance, treason, Civil War deception, disunion, despotism, aka tyranny. And that's tyranny of the slaveholders. And here's the thing, it's not all slaveholders. But the vast majority of slaves were owned by a tiny group of people represented by Calhoun. And this is how Jackson could say, I'm not just defending all common men. I mean, defending, to his point of view, slaveholders. As horrible as that is, but he's defending regular people against the elite who live in this really wealthy area, let's say Charleston. Gotta keep going back to South Carolina. And so Calhoun, though, saw this, and he had his allies. Think about it, they're all together talking. It's working. We got Jackson. We got him. And so they, led by Calhoun, turned down Jackson's tariff compromise. Basically saying, no, we're going to meet in Nashville, and you're going to bow to us. You're going to bow to what we demand. But But a lot of these state politicians are looking at this and saying, what has South Carolina got us into? Yeah, we don't like the tariff, but we're not ready for war. We're not ready for civil war. And they didn't go to Nashville. They panicked and the convention fell apart. So Calhoun, at the moment he could have declared victory with the compromise tariff, kept nullification on the table, acted like, see, we're coming together to protect slavery. Instead, it all fell apart. And his Southern allies left him fearful of Jackson, fearful of war. And so, behind the scenes again, Henry Clay worked on another compromise tariff. But Clay's pro-tariff. And this tariff actually did not cut as much as the tariff Jackson wanted. But Calhoun had no choice. Now he's lost. This is literally in 1 month, it all turned, and the tariff passed. The tariff passes, Calhoun is humiliated. I should add, South Carolina's sunk. They have to give in. They wouldn't nullify the force bill, but no one cared. They lost. So, first thing, nullification kind of died as an issue. The problem is, if the South is going to continue to play this game of chicken with the North, now their only thing they have is secession. That's it. Secession, that's war. By the way, do you notice how you spell secession? It is from the word secede, S-E-C-E-D-E. There's an E. It's not success or succession, it's secession. Everyone kind of does that. How do you spell secession? Not yet. Okay. All right, I look, what time is it? All right. But the Union was saved. If there would have been civil war in 1833, it would have been almost impossible for the South, for the North, aka the United States. The US would have lost. It's just by the nature of trying to subdue this, would have been almost impossible to win. But 30 years, a lot of things are going to change. They saved the Union. Did they? Still here. Didn't save it from civil war, but it saved the Union. And here's Jackson in this weird poem called Jackson and the Nullifiers. Nullifiers, it's supposed to be sung. It's worse than you think it would be. But here's a cartoon, and I really like this because it's a cartoon from 1861 and is talking about the South leaving the Civil War. And here's Jackson standing down Calhoun. And in 1861, here's the South standing down weak Northern politicians. Jackson, when he heard about nullification, said, I'll hang them all. President Buchanan, who was president when secession began in 1861, he hid under his desk fearful of assassination. I'm really not exaggerating. So what did the South do? Who's going to stop us? I don't know if Jackson could have stopped Civil War in 1861, but there was a big difference. So Jackson saved the Union. And yeah, that's why Jackson is such a complex character. Do you get it? Boy, is he complex. Save the Union and Indian removal. I know. It's wow. American history is an interesting thing, but that is why here's the statue for Jackson for the Battle of New Orleans. It makes sense. There's New Orleans, St. Charles Cathedral, the river is like this direction. And it's one of these pictures that really turned out well. I'm kind of proud of this one. But in 1862, when the United States retook New Orleans back into the Union, General Benjamin Butler, the American commander in New Orleans, the U.S. commander, he came and carved this into this statue. The Union must and shall be preserved, which is close to what Jackson said at that Jefferson Day dinner. That is a slap in the face of the South. And that is why that is in this statue in New Orleans, because Louisiana betrayed their country and joined the Confederacy. And so that's why that's there. I think that's kind of a cool touch right there. And made a great picture. I just was really thinking, I tried to get this. I remember like oh, it's a beautiful day. And then, wow, it worked out. I'm bragging about this because virtually none of my pictures work out. So let's get to the next and last big issue, the bank world. So here's Jackson defending the common man, or from the elite plantation owners. Here's Jackson defending or getting more land for the common man with Indian removal, that horrific Indian removal. And here's Jackson defending the common man and democracy against the big money establishment, the elite that's running the system. And the Whig Party was basically made up of the big plantation owners and the moneyed elite. Here's the First National Bank today, but then it was the Bank of the United States. And you notice, remember this, the classical architecture style with the columns. Just because I'm going to come back to it. This is what we call foreshadowing. Yeah, and in a way, we'll show you. And so with that, but we got to get to Jacksonian economics. Jacksonian economics, it's not really like this is back when the whole idea of economics was more than just simply basically formulas and models about the economy. It was politics. And to him, economics are political. Governments make rules. Governments print the money. Governments decide what direction the country will go. Economics is political. And to Jackson, therefore, it's democracy. We have a choice as a people. What direction will be? That's what Jackson is saying. Will we be wage slaves? Or will we have the right to have better wages and a place to live and school or not? Or should this be left up to the market and who has and who hasn't? That's economics. So there's not really a coherent plan. It's more of this inherent fear of monopolies and what capitalism was doing, the wage system, the factory system, encouraging speculation, all of these things. And remember the fear of monopolies. Monopolies, that fear goes back to, remember the Tea Act. I keep coming back to this because fear of monopolies was such a reason there is a United States. Tea Act, monopoly to the East India Company, that led to the Tea Party. And once that happened, couldn't really go back. This is ingrained in American history. So that fear, monopoly squashing the little man, AKA the common man. Next, he's a farmer. They're always in debt. One bad year, you might lose your farm. In fact, you might become an indentured servant. That wasn't that far ago. They were indentured servants. Or have to go to a city, become a wage slave. They feared debt, but they also feared speculation because there's these land speculators. And this is very American. George Washington was a land speculator. Remember trying to buy land cheap, hoping to drive the prices up so you can sell it with a profit. But land speculation then raises the prices for land for everybody. If speculators come in and try to buy land, price goes up. Does anybody know an example where that could have happened? Perhaps in your lifetime. In this very desk right here. No, what happened? Yeah, where? Yeah, in Montana. Yeah. No, you're right. Not everywhere in Montana. Okay, they're not moving to Culbertson, Mr. Montana. Sorry, Culbertson. Where's Culbertson? In the Culbertson. Or Culbertson. But look what happened to housing values in Bozeman. You're really seeing both. You're really seeing Missouri. That's speculation. People come in and stupidly drives the prices. So that's what they feared that. Next. So they thought we could handle this with hard money. Hard money, that's specie. Remember, species, gold and silver coin. Gold and silver coin, where the value of the money is actually inside the coin because it's gold or silver. Paper money, currency, the value is that the United States government says we're backing it up, or whatever country it might be. That's all the money it is today, all money today. Is in the United States. Then, if we have hard money, there'll be less money in circulation, there'll be less chance of speculation. Now, that's his plan. This helps small farmers. I should add, it doesn't work that way. This actually is not very good policy. But they're kind of just, it's all new. And so the root idea is we want to help debtors, average people. So here's though the key element. Government must be there for everybody. Nobody else or the big monopolies will not look out for you. Therefore, the very wealthy, they're looking out for themselves. Only the government, represented by Jackson and the democracy, majority rule, will look out for you. And this is what he had in his second inaugural address. So together we have the same values, the same opportunities, their purpose, destiny. And that's why he would be for, even though he didn't really understand it because it was so new and he didn't really understand wage work, but his supporters did, at least at first, they'd be pro-union. Alone, workers have very little power, but together we could have a shared contract, etc. And so, with that, this is kind of the beginning of liberal economics. It's not really a program, and liberal economics would actually do the exact opposite of this, and things would topple around and go back and forth. So, but it was that basic idea of fear of monopolies. The fear of monopolies, a lot of this, but government for the common good. And that's why laws-like fair, it's competition, will let individuals decide, sink or swim on your own merit, or lock in the market, or wealth. And this is a cartoon showing this. Here's Jackson fighting for us. So here's Jackson, bare knuckle brawling. Bare knuckle boxing was just becoming a big deal. As soon as you have cities and urban people working with for a wage, you start getting spectator sports. At the same time, bare knuckle boxing, big deal. Not the same as boxing today. They basically had to punch each other till somebody couldn't punch. They were knocked out or killed. Brutal beyond belief. But that's supposed to be Nicholas Biddle, the head of the Bank of the United States. Here's Webster and Clay cheering him on. But here she represents wealth, a good diet, and drinking port, which was a kind of a sweetened wine, which was a drink of the very low, cheering them on. And here's Jackson. That's Martin Van Buren behind. But then this kind of represents every man fighting for America, the soldier. Jackson was a soldier. And then here's the common frontiersman. This kind of idealized Jackson supporter, living in a log cabin along the frontier, drinking old-fashioned whiskey, not this fine port, and of course having a cat on their head. I don't know what the cat is there for, but I love the cat on the head. See, what two things do represent democracy? Cats and what food? Cheese. It's simple physics. So with that, so Nicholas Biddle, the head of the bank, Jackson kind of would represent the two sides. And this is Jackson's argument. The bank has too much power. The bank's contract or charter said they'll issue the currency. That's controlling the money supply. That's controlling the money supply. And that puts an immense amount of power inside of a private bank run by a Whig. There's Jackson saying, the people elected me and the Whig controls our economy. We need more of the people's control of the money. Yes.
Because he would like put his supporters in federal positions. He'd like just somebody there.
Good question. He couldn't because the bank was actually a private entity, but they had a contract from the government called the charter to do these things. So they must do these things by law, but it was private.
Is it still a private?
It's mostly government, but they want to separate it from the political win-loss of politics. And so the president will appoint members to a 6-year term to a Federal Reserve board. That's what the bank is today. And the chairman of the Federal Reserve is appointed by the president. But then they're supposed to be able to act relatively independent. So they won't be swayed by your president wanting the economy to do better right before they run for office to do something. And so with that, and there's flaws with that too. Nothing's perfect, except in here, right? Kind of amazing. I envy you. No, moving on. Oh, I should add, money supply. So that, don't think it turned, it's a term that got into economics in the 1970s, but what we're really talking about is the amount of money in circulation. Not money supply, it's not counting you, let's say you get all your money in barrels and jars in your backyard. It's not in circulation, it's in your backyard. It's money that's in circulation. So let's say you have something like prices are going up, inflation. Would you want a greater money supply, more money in circulation, or less money? So if things are more, prices are going up, and you want to get prices to start going down, you want less money. How does the Federal Reserve do that today? How do they get less money in circulation? What tool do they have? They have lots of tools. What's their biggest tool? Yes. Huh? Oh, no, you're just thinking about the actual paper. That's just, the paper is just a placeholder. The money today is on a computer screen in the Federal Reserve Bank in New York City. Which is kind of sick when you think about it, but that's what it is. It's on the computer screen. Paper money is just a placeholder for that on its computer. But that's a pretty good guess. You know what they did? Taxes. They don't do taxes. It's Congress. What do they do to interest rates? That they can control. Raise them or lower them. Raises. If they raise interest rates, it makes it harder to borrow money, and so people don't like go and buy that new car. Go and buy new situation. So, what is the Federal Reserve doing today? Raising or lowering interest rates. They just raise it 3/4 of a point, which is a lot. A lot. By the way, the new inflation numbers came out today. Inflation appears to be slowing dramatically. But inflation's worldwide. It's a worldwide phenomenon. It's every place that has higher prices. COVID. Same thing happened in 1921 after the Spanish flu. Same exact thing. So here's Jackson's point. They're not elected by anybody. So you have this concentration of power in the hands of a few people that led by Biddle. Not only that, they're stockholders. This is the first example of a corporation, this entity that literally, at the moment Jackson is president, is being created, of course, in Belgium. So why would somebody buy stock in the Bank of the United States? What do they want to get from this stock? Money. So now you have people not elected who want to get rich controlling the money supply. That's Jackson's elite in smoke-filled rooms. They always call them smoke-filled rooms until relatively recently because everybody's smoking, making all the decisions for everybody. And so what Jackson said about the Eastern establishment, there's a major element of truth there. Is it like that today? There's an element of truth of that today. But then once you get that truth, you can go off into all kinds of things. Masons. We all know who's really running Illuminati, but who's really running everything?
Oh, lizard.
Yeah, reptoids. Lizard people are running everything. Reptilians for the constellation Drago. I mean, it's so obvious. So, with that, the election of 1832 is coming up. By the way, Indian removal at this time. Nullification at this time. What an amazing period of our history. And the country, under the new constitution, is still over 40 years old. I mean, it might not survive. This is a hinge moment. Henry Clay is going to run in the new party called the Whigs. And he decides to recharter the bank, push it through Congress. He's now the most prominent senator in America. 4 years before the bank has to be rechartered, the contract renewed. He wants to make Jackson make a decision, an election issue. Kind of like that tariff of 1828. Remember the tariff of abominations? He thinks Jackson is just talking about the bank. just try to get people riled up. And so if Jackson signs the bill, Jackson's a hypocrite. If he vetoes it, you're destroying the American economy. He's thinking it will silence Jackson. And here shows it. You see it? This is one gruesome cartoon, but it's not the most gruesome. That's a needle. He's sewing Jackson's mouth shut. That's pretty gruesome. Jackson, though, hates the bank and despises Henry Clay. Not as much as Calhoun. Everyone hates Calhoun. Yeah. Basically, yeah. They changed the Constitution to have that, to allow for that. But breeding poison, yeah. That's coming 12 years from now. We're going to get to that in about probably Tuesday. So Jackson vetoes it. Jackson vetoes it. This was a big deal. No one had vetoed anything. And since it requires 2/3 of a vote in Congress to override it, it's vetoed. The bank is not going to be rechartered. No one's really sure what Jackson's plan is, but now he's taking it. I'm all right. If you're going to use this against me, I'll destroy it. And Clay thinks he has him. He thinks Jackson is gone. He's cooked, as this bloody cartoon shows. Here they are, frying Jackson up on a stove, ready to carve him up. Like I said, the cartoons were gruesome. That's Webster and Clay with a knife. Huh? That is supposed to represent justice. You know, she has the just scales of justice right here. You see that? And she has the spatula about to Jackson. Yeah, that's Martin Van Buren. Weren't the cartoons just awesome back then? All right, so Jackson would be the first president to use vetoes. This is politics. It was unclear that the original ideas they would veto on constitutional laws. Well, Jackson vetoed, and eventually he would do 12 vetoes. And now presidents would use the threat of a veto to stop legislation because it's so hard to overturn. And this is at state level too. And so this is going to, his opponents will say, Jackson using the veto will make him like a tyrant. Now, I showed you this picture before of him like a king. Remember, king numbers. Standing over the Constitution. Do you see his orb? It says, it's hard to read, but it says veto. You see kings have a little orb, they have an orb, and then a scepter. Here's the scepter, and you know the scepter is like a hickory switch, the beat peak. And instead of an orb, it's the veto. A tyrant. Or is he a man of the people using the veto to protect us from that wealthy elite? Here is Jackson as a big cat. Yes, we have a cat again. Protecting the people's house. And it's kind of like a granary from all the rats. And this picture's a little pixelated. I can't find a bigger version of this, but it's such a great one. But that's Clay. He's just about ready to eat Clay. Or shake him, you know, like a cat. That's an imitation of a cat, don't you think? A lot of cat references. So in the election of 1832, Clay really thought the people would be behind the bank. But this is democracy now. More people than ever before choosing electors, and they chose electors supporting Jackson. Clay lost pretty handily. And Jackson like, the people love me, crush the bank. It might not have been a mandate to crush the bank, but that's what Jackson decides. I will crush the Eastern establishment with this. This is economically not a very good idea. It's not a horrible idea if he would have had something to replace it, but he wasn't sure. But he knew the enemies of the people like Biddle, will destroy the economy unless we stop them. Yes. And then with that, you'll notice one more thing. See the independent Democrats? The electors of South Carolina, they voted independently. Why? Nullification is happening right. So they're already kind of breaking the law. So with that, Jackson, all the tax receipts are supposed to go in the bus. He pulled them out and started putting them in state banks. Well, these state banks would be accused of being political allies, and they were. And so they called them pet banks, like Jackson's pet. And he put the money in. There was no real plan on what to do with this. And this is a flaw in Jackson right here. Jackson knows there's a problem with the bank and that concentrated wealth in the concentrated power in the hands of a few wealthy men. There's a problem with that, and I'll show you why in just a second. So arguably, he's right here. He's just, I'll show you. Yeah. That's the tax revenue. And so tax revenues would be placed in there. And then basically the government, and then when the government would spend money, the bank would give them the money for the tax receipts in, I don't have a picture of the currency there, but banknotes for the national bank. We do that with the Federal Reserve now. And so when the federal government spends money, they literally just kind of move money, the Federal Reserve Bank does. They subtract money from one column on the computer screen, put it in another column. That's literally what happens. I mean, every time there's like a bank makes a loan, they have to go through the Federal Reserve System and they find them. It's a very complex system that it's kind of also uncomfortable. Because we like to think of money as something we can hold on to. No, it's just our fantasies and dreams. Moving on. So Jackson is destroying the bank. Do you see it? Here he is putting the money. This is the creed, putting in state banks. You recognize this? What's that? The columns falling down. And here are all the supporters of the bank running away in fear. Here are the Whig politicians running away in fear. And who's that? Yeah, it's above, but that's Bill. Destroying the bank. And then, once all this money started flowing into the banks do what banks do. They started loaning it out. And all of a sudden, all these other banks got a hold of this money. Just all of a sudden, all these banks were flush with cash. And they called them wildcat banks. All these state banks, some got government revenue, some acted like they did. They lied. Started making risky loans. Now, you might ask, why would somebody make a risky loan? No. Well, okay, they could be, but there's a very important reason. Yes. Partially, but they're risky loan. Why would a bank make a risky loan to somebody? Because they can do what? Yeah. Really high interest rates. And so even if they don't get it all back, they get enough of it back to make a lot of money. That's why they do that. And there's something else you must understand about banks. A bank is an entity. It's an entity created by people, but it's an entity. The people who work there make money. They get paid. They get bonuses if they make loans, because the bank makes money. So they get money, the people who work there. They get money. The higher up you are, the more money you make. If the bank closes down to make too many risky loans, what happens to the person who made all the money? Well, they might lose their job and have to get another loan, but they keep the money. Banks aren't people, so the people who work there can still profit by driving the bank down. Banks are entities. Businesses are entities. The people who work there, Albertsons was just bought by a bunch of guys, what's called private equity. You know what Albertsons is? Grocery store. They own Safeway too, same store. They just have different names. They're gouging it right now. They're taking everything of profit, everything out of it. Why? Okay. Because then they keep the money.
Didn't the Supreme Court just say?
This actually goes back, we'll mention a little bit there. Yes, corporations. There was a summary of a case called the, Southern Pacific versus Santa. And we'll get to it. But that kind of went away for a while, but now, yes, corporations have all the rights of people.
But they're not.
Right now?
Right now, right now in like history.
No, corporations are brand new. Yes.
So, uh, I'm just gonna give a word of my soup. I said last, assume everyone is a great idiot who will make any attempts at making an order, but without caring about any weaker disasters and make area. I mean, seriously, effective market prior economic theory is rooted in this idea.
Well, not everyone is that greedy and awful, but remember Adam Smith kind of said that. Remember Hamilton kind of said that we got to bribe them to be loyal. So there's an element of that. I don't think everybody is. There'd be no teachers. 'Cause we're obviously not in for that. But see the building? Here's the thing. It fueled land speculation. All of a sudden, these banks flush with money. By the way, Hank, you brought up a good point. We should be very skeptical of people's money. They might not want to speak on it. That's a way to look at it. They're skeptical. They might have alternative points of view. Doesn't mean they're bad, doesn't mean they're good. So, land speculation. Also, the banks are like, we have all this money. And they started loaning them out. And they started like, oh, there's free money. This fueled all these people buying land, which raised the price of land. Now, speculative or over speculation is called a bubble. Because imagine this image. Here's about the level where prices should be. All of a sudden, prices are going to be pushed up like a bubble. But there's nothing backing it up. They're overvalued. So the prices are being pushed up like a bubble. And then all of a sudden, something happens where people realize we're overpaying it. And what happens to prices? They tumble like the bubble popped. Collapse. Now, where did they just get a bunch of new? Yes, the Southwest where they're kicking people off. It's no coincidence. They're tied together in this weird, horrible connection of slavery, nullification, bank war, Indian removal. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything is connected. So all this land opened up. There's demand for cotton because of the Industrial Revolution. This is incredible soil right here. Dark, black, rich soil called the Black Belt. Moving in there. Just at the same time. Prices are going up. Now, first, Jackson is seeing this as a good thing. They didn't realize, oh no, speculation. First, my programs are working. Biddle is furious. And what Biddle does is he decides, I'll show you. If you're going to take out government revenues, I will take government currency. Here's one of the banknotes out of circulation. Pull money back. So money would cycle through. He'd have his banks tied to him. Make sure they pay back whatever debts they have to the bank, and then they hold on to it and not loan it out. So they stifled the money supply. Now, this might actually help stop fueling speculation, but that didn't happen. Why did he do this? He wanted to destroy the economy. He wanted to create massive deflation. Prices drop, the economy tanks, corporate companies can't pay back their loans, and then remind everybody, this is why you need a bank. I will destroy the economy to prove I'm right. Who warned that men like Biddle would do this? Jackson. So this proves Jackson's point. The same thing happened after the Tea Party. And remember the coercive acts, those intolerable acts? And all the patriots said, see, told you they do it. And so they did it. And what happened? This would eventually lead to a panic in 1837, but not yet. Here's a gruesome cartoon, and I still can't figure this one out. Here's the, this is Clay and Webster, the two ones we need to know. Here's Biddle, and this is supposed to be like the American edifice, the American bank, and they're getting him to puke up the dollars. I'm not sure what that is, but there's Jackson looking in. He's doing like a, oh, little guy crouching. I have no idea what that is. I think that's supposed to be like somebody who lost everything in this depression. Fine, like doing this, but I can't read it. Oh, not, no, no. So in 1836, there's going to be an election. While this is going on, Jackson, old, he's beat up. He can't hardly eat anymore. His stomach is so, the bullet went through part of his stomach. He just can't run. His last few years, he basically eat like a rice gruel and dry milk. Not to get drunk, but as a pig. Well, Jackson, hard life. Like him or not, hard life. So it's running mate, the Democrat, Martin Van Buren. And he really pushed that he's just like Jackson. From the little tiny county of Kinderhook County, so he's dubbed Old Kinderhook, or the Kinderhook Fox. The Whigs ran 3 people. They thought they could split the electoral college and both styles. But it didn't work. It didn't work. Three Whigs split the vote, but Van Buren still won the electoral college. Yes.
So why would you do this? If you split the vote 3 ways, that's basically giving a vote.
Remember, in the electoral college, you need a majority. And so the thought was, if we could get just enough for the 3 votes, so Van Buren can't get 50%, it goes to the House of Representatives, and then we got a shot. That's what they're thinking. You're exactly right, though. You know, in a winner-take-all election, if it was popular vote, yeah, it's not a good strategy. But we're electoral college. So after this happened, Jackson was still president until March of 1837. And they issued what's called the specie circular, because all of a sudden the realization hit. Land is getting too expensive. If we wanted to open this up for small farmers, who's the only ones who can afford it? Yeah, and that's what happened. They're moving in. Here's a story of somebody who tried to do this in Illinois. And it says, I'm going to Illinois. It goes, I've been there. Look at how the wagon is. They lost it. And so they issued the specie circular. This was a desperation measure. Federal land only with specie. Hard coins. The thought was there's less money circulation. This will stop the speculation. So they're going to purposely create deflation, try to drop the price. The problem is there's not very much gold and silver coins in circulation. And so all of a sudden, people were paying paper money for all of this land. All of a sudden now, all they have is a few gold coins. What happens to the price of land? Tanked, AKA the bubble burst. Now the land was way overvalued, but that's what would do it. And there were other things too. There people were investing in railroads, doing kind of the same thing, that new technology there. But that will lead to prices tumbling. And so when Van Buren became president, the bubble had burst. And what's going to happen? Something nobody had ever seen before, a worldwide disaster, the Panic of 1837. Now, it wasn't just the bubble, or the bubble burst, also burst in railroads too. And I'll tell you more about that down the road, but everyone's investing in this new wonder technology. But the bubble burst in land and railroads, causing massive deflation. Companies couldn't make money, they couldn't pay back their debts. Workers couldn't pay back their debts. Here's a family, and he's see his bill. Oh, there's this family starving, just had a baby, and there's the bank coming to foreclose his home. And instead of specie circular, it's specie claw. So that means bank failures. Hey, bank failure. If you have money in that bank and it shuts its door, what do we call that? Panic. And a depression. The worst depression that's ever happened. More people than ever before had wage work, and if companies can't sell their products, workers are on the streets. And soon they're going to dub it, do you like that term? Van Ruin's depression. Because who do you blame? We had no idea what's going on. Just like today. A lot of people blame President Biden for the inflation. Well, it's worldwide. The president has limited tools, but then again, good times, the president takes probably too much credit. Yeah. Okay, up to that time now. Here's the best part about this new economic system. Each depression is gonna get worse. Yeah. Now, but the booms will be big. But then every time there's a boom, people think it will go on forever. So then it will go on worse. And so with this. We're gonna jump right to it. Let me tell you one quick story for the Bellmans. You want to hear a quick story? While this is going on, Richard Lawrence would be the first man ever to attempt to assassinate the president of the United States. He was a man who believed that Jackson was depriving him of his rightful position as king of France. There might be issues with Richard Lawrence. So the president had no guard. The president would just take a walk. Jackson would take a walk every morning. And he might have a couple friends with him. Nobody ever dreamt of the idea that somebody would shoot the president. It made no sense. Lawrence walked up with 2 loaded pistols, and these are still flintlock muskets. Walked up to Jefferson and literally this far pulled out the pistol and no warning, click. The hammer came down. It was loaded. Everything was perfectly fine with that pistol, but for whatever reason didn't go off. Everybody thought. He had the other pistol in his hand. Pulled it out, click. Both pistols should have fired and worked. What happened next?
Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson, after everyone recovered, like, ah! Jackson grabbed him, threw him down, and proceeded to nearly beat him to death with his cane. They had to pull Jackson off. And he's like, why did you do that? Why did you do that? Beating him. Richard Lawrence would go to federal trial. This is a federal case because it's in the United States territory, DC. He'd be the first man who would ever be acquitted for reasons of, wait for it, insanity. Okay, so the Whigs, remember who the Whigs represented, who the Democrats represented? That's all we need to know. Sound good? They hate democracy. That's the big thing, but it's the capitalists or the big money. Problem is, there's not as many. That's the problem. It's not to figure out a way.
Thank you.
Have you heard of Davy Crockett? We didn't mention Dave's Crockett. Oh, because we talked about Daniel's movie.
Yeah.
I have a bigger problem.
I know, you spelled that.
I know, isn't that cool? We'll get to it. We won the lottery. Davy Crockett.